If one day you realized the foster father you dedicated your very soul to serve was actually the one behind every single tragedy, then what would you do? Hello. Greetings everyone. It's me, HN Anime again. Our story today is about Ash, a young boy possessing brilliant natural talent, who ended up becoming a pawn to be exploited. Fortunately, he was reborn into the past, and once again became the foster son of another. But in this life, everything will be different, because the person who adopted him is actually the older brother of his enemy. Alright, let's dive straight into the main content. This young man with a handsome face, who has been beaten black and blue, is Ash, the foster son of the head of the Elm family. They're the strongest military clan across the 6 continents, who have dedicated their swords to protecting the imperial family for generations. The head of the family is named Roderick Elm. He is the only person in the kingdom to possess 7 wings. During a military campaign, after a massive slaughter that wiped out the battlefield, he encounters his foster son, who is heavily wounded, standing behind him. Roderick hypocritically checks on him, but Ash exposes the cruel father's conspiracy, stating that, from the very beginning, he used Ash's unit as bait for the battle. After exploiting them, he discarded them without mercy. Hearing this, Roderick indifferently humiliates him. He believes that is the only value for a wingless person like Ash. Many years ago, Roderick met him when he was just a small child, clinging to life in a blizzard. He took him in and raised him to adulthood. So Ash did everything he could to repay that life-saving debt. But because he was not a blood-related son, he had no wings to repay his father's kindness. He was always mocked by his peers, a wingless person who doesn't even have a crest. Shouldn't dream so high. What they're talking about are wing crests. The more wing crests a person possesses, the greater their latent magic power. And Ash was the only person in the Duke's mansion unable to use magic, being called the Wingless One by his brothers. However, he never lost heart. He risked his life training with the sword every single day, believing that one day, this loyalty would be rewarded. In the end, all he received was a group of ambushers and his father's cold words. What right does an ordinary tool like you have to demand expectations? You're an eyesore. Get out of my sight immediately. Ash truly realized his own foolishness. He gripped his sword and charged straight at him. But unfortunately, Ash was intercepted by his 2 brothers and bound tightly with red chains. He crawled in humiliation under the insults of his father and brothers. Desperately, he asked, if you were just going to discard me in the end, then why did you save me in the first place? It was from that question that Ash learned a shocking secret. It turns out that from the very beginning, the power of the 7 wings was already inside his body. After revealing the truth, the cold-blooded Roderick turned on his heel and left, leaving a weak Ash lying in the snow for his 2 brothers to eliminate. In his final moments at death's door, he suddenly felt something strange. He faintly felt his body being wrapped in warmth. Ash slowly opened his eyes and found himself in the body of an infant, lying in a woman's arms. Suddenly, Ash heard the shouts of soldiers. Search everywhere. We must find that woman at all costs and bring the newborn child to Lord Roderick. As soon as he heard the name Roderick, he had a feeling, recalling that he was also picked up on a snowy night. He realized he had returned to the day. Roderick found him in the blizzard. Then Ash struggled with all his might to escape the woman's arms. He told himself he had to save himself to survive, and must not let himself fall into the hands of the ducal family. His limbs felt scalding hot, as if they were on fire, but he still crawled through the thick curtain of snow. Ash crawled for a short distance until he collapsed in exhaustion at the feet of a young lady. She turned her face and called for her father, Viscount Highfree. He quickly picked the boy up in his arms and said anxiously, "Why is there a child in a place like this?" Then he turned to look at the tracks. Ash had left while crawling through the snow and was stunned. He hadn't expected the boy to have traveled such a long distance. He was incredibly curious about the boy's identity. A blurred vision and a faint voice suddenly appeared. "Where am I?" The childhood image of Alphen suddenly became clear. This child came to meet me. At that moment, Aster suddenly jolted awake. The lingering echoes of that dream remained, making him exclaim. An angel, Alphen, who was peeking in to watch, exclaimed with delight, "Sister." The baby opened his eyes. FRE, standing nearby, frowned and warned, "Hey, don't tease him. You're going to pull his cute little nose right off." Immediately after, Aster suddenly began to struggle violently, causing the children around him to panic. What on earth is happening? Aster didn't stop there, but even started rubbing his face against FRE's sleeve, making her scream out loud. "No, don't do that." After struggling wildly for a while, Aster leaped out of the arms of everyone around him. He tried his best to crawl forward, as if trying to grab onto something ahead. Seeing this, Fre panicked. Damn it. What is going on? She picked Alphen up and chased after him with all her might. Stop right there. Seeing the chaotic scene behind him, Aster was completely confused. Why are they chasing me? In an instant, he gritted his teeth as if concentrating all his mana, lunging his body forward. The pupils of his eyes glowed with an eerie light. Right after that, the tiny body of Aster was suddenly lifted up by a mysterious energy. I'm flying. Is this magic power? And then Aster tried to flip his body to change the situation in time. However, that mysterious power suddenly vanished, causing his body to plummet uncontrollably. I can't control it. I am falling. Instinctively, Aster closed his eyes tight, too afraid to face it. Just then, a man appeared and caught him. Now you're falling from the sky, too? You truly are a strange child. Aster's eyes widened upon hearing those words. Turning to look, he realized who this man was. His jaw dropped in shock, because the person before him was Viscount Highfree, the older brother of Duke Roderick. As soon as he recognized him, Aster's inner voice whispered, "No way. Don't tell me this is another branch of the Elm family." A fragment of his past memories flickered. Highfree Elm, the head of the Viscount house, a side branch of the Elm family. There was once a time when he stood side by side with his younger brother Roderick. He was one of the two pillars, trusted with the grave responsibility of protecting the imperial family. But the Viscount Highfree that I knew died in the Civil War, along with the destruction of his entire family. Now I'm certain, after connecting all the dots, Aster realized with amazement that he truly had returned to the past. Aster sighed helplessly. I tried so hard to escape the Duke's family, only to be picked up by his older brother. Later, Aster lay snugly in the arms of a woman. She looked at him with worried eyes. The child's magic power went wild and made him fly into the sky. It seemed so. I knew he wasn't an ordinary baby. Then, the corners of her lips curved up into a friendly smile. The woman hugged Aster tightly and comforted him. You must have been so scared. You're safe now. Hearing those words, he could only stare with wide eyes, not understanding a thing. Standing nearby, Highfree also watched them and smiled instinctively. He gently reached out to touch Aster. Then he spoke softly. This child carries within him a power that is beyond imagination. Highfree lifted the boy's shirt to reveal the pattern on his back and remarked, "This mark is the proof." When the woman saw the mark, she winced in astonishment. This is the 7 virtues themselves. Aster was also shocked when he saw the mark. Why is this appearing on my body? As soon as the thought finished, his pupils constricted as if he had remembered something. He recalled Roderick's words from his past life. What we need is the power of the 7 virtues inside of you. After realizing it, he was stunned for a moment. Aster happened to remember the scene that had occurred on that snowy night. To achieve his goals, Roderick had lifted Aster up and taken him away. Thinking back on everything, he clenched his fists in rage. He only saved me to steal the 7 virtues. Wingless? What a joke. He tore the wings off someone else with his own hands. Yet he dared to speak like that. The woman suddenly held him tight and asked anxiously. She looked at Highfree's expression and asked cautiously, "How should we handle this child?" A bad premonition suddenly surged in his head. His tiny hands tightened. I can't let this power fall into the hands of the Elm family. I need this power to get revenge on him. Highfree thought for a moment and then decided, I will adopt this child. These words made the tension in Aster vanish. In its place was a look of pure amazement. Highfree reached his hands out toward Aster. He gently stroked the boy's head and remarked, "Right now, this child is just a fledgling who cannot fly on his own, until the day he chooses to take flight by his own will. I will take responsibility for raising him." Upon hearing that, Aster's eyes widened in disbelief. At that moment, Martha and Fr suddenly tumbled to the floor. Seeing the children appearing one by one, Highfree asked seriously, "So you all heard that?" Martha sat up and whispered softly, "We were just worried about the baby." Highfree could only sigh at the sight. Fre eagerly ran to the woman's side. "Mom." The little girl looked at Aster with an excited face. "What is this baby's name?" She smiled and thought for a moment. "Let's see." Then she lifted him up and named him Aster, the name of a new star that has just been born into our family. Time flew by, and 15 years passed. The moment Highfree arrived at the academy, a man greeted him respectfully. "We have been waiting for you, Viscount Highfree." At that moment from the carriage, the mysterious silhouette of Aster appeared, stepping down from the carriage. He walked with an air of absolute confidence. Aster carefully and politely helped Alphen. "Sister Alphen, please be careful." She smiled back. "Thank you, Aster." Aster smiled as he watched Alphen's bubbly demeanor. Then, He gripped his sword and followed behind her. The Sword Dance Festival, a high society event held annually by a prominent ducal family under the Elm banner for the martial aristocracy. On the surface, it's a place for families to strengthen ties, but it's also a stage for each house to show off their promising young swordsmen. Soon, the two of them stepped up behind High Free, those who carry the glory of the lineage. And so, with High Free leading the way, Aster and Alfin followed majestically. All around them were the whispers and murmurs of the students at the academy. Look, the Viscount's house is here. Are they here to be a laughingstock again? I heard they couldn't produce an heir, so they adopted some nameless brat from nowhere. How much longer do they plan to drag the Elm name through the mud? Aster walked past calmly, leaving everyone stunned. So that's the guy? Seeing that he might be bothered, Alfin reminded him firmly. Don't pay them any mind. She clenched her fist and warned. In this place, if you show even a hint of weakness, you'll be crushed. Immediately, Aster walked on with an expressionless face. Beside Alfin's arm, which was trembling with rage, High Free also spoke in a low, solemn voice. This is the current standing of our Viscount house. He paused for a moment, then turned back to look at him with trusting eyes. I want you to see it for yourself. He looked at Aster's ice-cold expression and asked, Are you disappointed? The corner of his mouth curled into a faint smile. With a firm attitude, he replied, Not at all, father. A cold atmosphere like this actually suits me quite well. Seeing that reaction, High Free let out a proud laugh. That's good then. In his past life, as the disgrace of the Elm family, he had made the worst social debut possible. It was a place filled with bitter memories. Aster tightly gripped the sword in his hand with a determined thought. But now that the 7 virtues have returned, I am different. Aster's gaze sharpened, piercing as a knife, as he stared intently at his goal. At that moment, High Free, Alfin, and Aster all suddenly looked up. Toward a classroom window. Through the glass, Darius and Grian appeared with unfriendly expressions. Aster silently stared back, his hand unconsciously tightening. He followed High Free and thought triumphantly, well then, let's begin a brilliant debut into high society. The swordsmanship competition, the city's centerpiece event, broke out. A testament to an era where knights ruled the world. On the arena floor, a swordsman gripped his blade with eyes full of resolve. His opponent was no pushover either, gritting his teeth as he charged forward. Clearly, a knight must possess both strength and spirit. The two of them lunged at each other, clashing head-on amidst the cheers of the crowd. Strength is swordsmanship. Quickly, the stronger swordsman knocked his opponent back. Spirit is reputation. He coldly rushed in once more. Both used their momentum to strike at one another again. And there is one thing that proves a person possesses both. A crest gradually appeared on the swordsman's hand. His eyes glowed brilliantly. The swordsman swung his blade down with a direct strike, shattering the opponent's sword, and leaving him in absolute tatters. In the end, he raised his sword high to the admiration of everyone present. The ultimate symbol of all is the wing crest. The winner is also the one whose wing crest is clearly displayed on their body. Up in the stands, Alfin covered her ears, looking annoyed. This place is still suffocatingly crazy. She quietly recalled the expressions of friend and FRE from earlier inside. No wonder sister, friend, and sister FRE didn't want to come. Meanwhile, Aster just sat pensively with his head bowed. He suddenly remembered the tragic scene of his own defeat against Darius. Alfin curiously looked over and called out, Aster? She asked anxiously, Are you nervous? After all, this is your very first sword dance festival. But contrary to his earlier state, he replied confidently this time, Actually, no. Thinking to himself, if anything, it just feels familiar. Alfin looked at Aster, unable to hide her confusion. Just then, High Free walked over to give instructions. I'm heading out for a moment to attend a meeting. Help me look after Alfin, okay? Hearing this, she was a bit displeased. Father, I'm much more capable than Aster. He could only smile and reply. You're quite clumsy, sister. The Viscount listened and then placed a hand on his shoulder. He looked at Aster with eyes full of expectation. There are many children your age here. Build connections whenever you can. Then his expression shifted as he whispered a warning. And do not let anyone discover the 7 virtues. He watched High Free's departing back with some hesitation. Father says that, but he realized the murderous glares from everyone. Every eye was fixed intently on him. Aster let out a weary sigh. In an atmosphere of such blatant hostility, how am I supposed to connect with anyone? Suddenly, he noticed something. Alfin was surprised to see Aster leaving in a hurry. Aster, where are you going? He didn't look back, only replying, to make some friends. Aster walked straight toward Darius and his group of friends. Darius looked on with contempt. Who the hell is this kid? Aster introduced himself loudly. Nice to meet you, cousin Darius. Aster's face increasingly showed a sense of satisfaction. I am Aster Elam, your younger brother. Aster continued to speak without paying any mind to the older boy's scowling face. I saw you from outside, so I came over to say hello. Brian, standing nearby, sneered. Oh, is it that adopted brat? The one the Viscount picked up off the street? Darius let out a disgusted laugh upon hearing that. Well, no wonder. How can you be so shameless as to call yourself an Elam? Looking at the two figures before him, Aster couldn't help but feel rage. Darius and Brian, the two legitimate heirs of the Elam family, the two who killed him in his past life. Aster thought silently to himself. They once seemed so terrifying. But now, faced with his unending hatred, they were just children playing dress-up as adults. Alfin suddenly appeared at that moment, cutting through the atmosphere. Aster. She grabbed Aster's hand and spoke sternly. Let's go. We're going back. Consider the greetings finished. Darius spoke up as soon as he saw her. Alfin, you came too? He teased her excitedly. What's this? Not hiding behind your father's back today? His words grew increasingly rude. Come over here and put on a show for the guys. This is an order from the main house. You know that full well, don't you? But instead, Alfin simply shot Darius a furious glare and shouted. No thank you. The main house and the side branches are not in a master-servant relationship. As Aster was being pulled away, he hurriedly called out, Sister, before he could finish his sentence. He felt her hands trembling. I wasn't done talking yet. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but feel heavy-hearted. Darius then shouted out in an arrogant tone. Do you guys know something? He began spreading malicious gossip. Her father is a knight, but he couldn't even protect the king. So to take responsibility, his own biological brother chopped off his arm. Hearing those words, Alfin winced slightly. But Darius still wouldn't stop. Thank God I don't carry that failure's bloodline. She screamed out in rage. Take that back. But before Alfin could even finish her sentence, Darius bluntly spat a mouthful of wine directly into her face. If you dare insult my father, I will. He looked at her with pure disdain. He only produced useless daughters. Can't even inherit a baron's title. Your father must be so disappointed in you. He then flashed a devious look and pointed his finger at her. This isn't the last dance. Next time, remember to wear something you don't mind getting soaked. Or just throw on some old rags instead. Alfin could only remain silent, gripping her dress in absolute frustration. Aster stood still, lost in thought. On the way here, I was worried. He looked at each of their faces one by one. I thought that perhaps when I met them again, I wouldn't feel angry anymore. After thinking that, Aster grabbed the wine bottle from their hands. Then he approached Alfin and placed a hand on her shoulder. But luckily, without hesitation, he tossed the bottle toward Darius. Hey, Darius! He caught the bottle, looking wary. Aster immediately swung his sword, slicing the bottle in two. Thankfully, you're still the same piece of trash as always. Wine splashed all over Darius, leaving him completely stunned. Huh? Brian shouted anxiously, brother. Meanwhile, he just calmly licked the wine off his blade. What? It's just grape juice. Then, using the same hateful gaze Darius had used, he said, It suits a parasitic noble like you perfectly. Rewinding time to 3 years ago, a desperate scream rang out. Stop him, Aster. Highfree shouted a warning. Are you trying to kill your sisters? Stay right there. He commanded sternly. Snap out of it. Witnessing this scene, Hayfree's expression turned to shock. So this is the 7 virtues. I never imagined it would hide such a dangerous power. In his heart, he wondered, can this kind of power truly be controlled? He was also confused and started to doubt himself. Because of both me and you. Aster, at that exact moment, a subordinate rushed into the room to report. Viscount, there is an emergency. The others present there frowned in annoyance at the sudden interruption. What's going on? We're in the middle of negotiations. The subordinate's voice faltered strangely. Only after a long pause did he dare to report. The sons of the main house and the Elam side branch. The sons of both sides are engaged in a duel. As soon as the words were out, Hayfree's face tightened. What? Meanwhile, Roderick's eyes betrayed a deep, unpredictable calculation. Upon hearing the news, he decisively stood up and left. At the same time, Alfin came running in breathlessly. Father. He stopped briefly. Alfin? She asked in confusion. What's happened? The voice of a duke rang out with excitement. Look over there. He seemed very satisfied. A fratricidal battle within the Elam family. It's not a sight you see every day. His gaze carried a hint of judgment. Depending on how this ends. Everyone in the room was suddenly filled with curiosity. The duke's lips curled into a smirk. This sword dance festival might just turn into a disaster. Down in the arena, Darius raised his sword majestically, daring to pick a fight with the ducal family. You really are an idiot. Just a stray brat raised in the gutters. You don't even understand the gap in our power. The crowd around them went wild witnessing the scene. That's a four-wing crest, as expected of the heir to the ducal house. His level is completely different. He couldn't hide his smug expression. Come on, show me your wing crest. He didn't stop attacking and challenging him. Or are you too embarrassed to call yours out after seeing mine? But Aster maintained an eerie calm, boasting about such a mediocre pattern. He disdainfully remarked, I truly cannot bring myself to do something so embarrassing. These words completely infuriated Darius. Before he could get even angrier, Aster proposed, if I win, you will have to apologize to my sisters, got it? His cousin readily agreed, fine. But if I win, you'll be my dog. Darius's eyes overflowed with self-confidence. I will order you around for the rest of your life. His attack was very fast, but Aster blocked it. However, because the force was so great, he was pushed back, sending dust flying everywhere. Aster's grip on his sword tightened even more. Darius spoke arrogantly. This is the power of one who possesses a crest. Finished, he charged forward like a storm. Seeing this, Alfin grew increasingly worried. Aster, the sharp-haired count, remarked that Darius's swordsmanship was still amateur, given the current situation. But no matter how poor the technique, the overwhelming amount of mana from a wing crest is enough to compensate for everything. To put it in perspective, if the mana of one wing is like a candle flame, then the mana sealed in 4 wings is an explosion. As the fight went on, Darius's momentum only grew. What happened to that attitude from before? He continued to taunt him incessantly. Didn't you say you'd make me apologize? Or was it just big talk? He roared, show me your power. Watching from above, the blonde duke was slightly taken aback. Is the match over? Aster's sword tip flicked across. He had blocked the heavy strike. This made Darius's eyes bulge in surprise. What? He only replied coldly, you talk too much. With that, Aster used his strength to hurl his cousin into the air. The aura he radiated now was incredibly domineering. Aster thought to himself, for the past 15 years, I have learned to control mana at the Viscount's house. Just to wait for this one chance to get revenge on you all. His eyes flashed with a sharp edge. The next strike was aimed unhesitatingly straight at Darius's head, leaving him no time to react. The pressure forced his knees to buckle against the cold ground. Everyone around could only stare in wide-eyed amazement. Darius, is actually being pushed back. Even Darius himself couldn't wrap his head around it. I have 4 wings. Aster remained silent, not uttering a single word. Darius's sword looked as though it were about to snap in half. The amount of mana being released was massive. The crowd finally erupted into a frenzy. Is it possible he's actually going to win? They commented excitedly. Darius is being completely overwhelmed. He doesn't even have a chance to fight back. Everyone felt goosebumps rising on their skin. Does a monster like that still exist within the Elm family? His actions continued without pause. Hayfrey's heart sank with worry. This was bad. Darius gritted his teeth, struggling to endure. He tried to recall if anything like this had ever happened before. His mouth faltered as he cried out, hey, stop. A shout rang out from above. No, Aster. An enormous source of power radiated outward. Everyone present was treated to a spectacular sight. Darius's sword actually shattered into 2 pieces. Once it was over, Aster left him with a message. Next time, you should show up wearing rags. Aster emphasized every single word. Something you don't mind getting soaked, cousin. He realized then that he was no longer Ash, the wingless one. Alfin looked at him with a satisfied smile. As of now, just realizing that fact was enough to clear his mind. Out of nowhere, Aster's pupils suddenly constricted. An oppressive source of power was slowly approaching. A shiver ran down his spine. His true enemy was only appearing now. That person was Roderick. The hall was filled with nonstop whispering and gossip. Incredible. The youngest son of a Viscount's house actually defeated the 3rd son of the head of the main house. Amidst the buzzing rumors, a pair of feet walked slowly forward. But this has truly spun out of control. There's no way that man will remain silent after having his honor tarnished like this. It was none other than that person was Aster with a stern expression. The 8th generation head of the Ella main house stood there. Darius let out a faint, nervous laugh. Eyes followed the scene as Aster took each step closer to Roderick. He frowned, his face turning cold and sharp. Despite the oppressive aura, he showed no fear toward Duke Roderick Aelum. Immediately after, Darius scrambled to his feet. He knelt basely before Roderick. Father. Darius immediately began to snitch, his hand pointing repeatedly at Aster. It's him. That bastard dared to oppose the main house, even though he's just a filthy half-breed. Those words only made Roderick angrier. Please, father, use your power to teach him a lesson. Roderick didn't answer and coldly struck out at him. Darius stared at his own hands in total shock. Roderick's ruthless action silenced the entire hall. Even Brian became completely stunned. Roderick withdrew his hand with a cold, powerful gaze. How can a loser laugh so shamelessly? You have tarnished the honor of our family. One who cannot avenge their own defeat. Seeing this, Highfree shouted out in panic. No, stop. Roderick didn't care and raised his hand high. That is unworthy of holding a sword. The entire auditorium suddenly fell deathly silent. Darius was now consumed by unending terror. Roderick glanced over with a frigid stare. He couldn't help but be surprised by Aster's actions. What do you think you're doing? He remained calm and slowly explained, my cousin, but still hasn't said his apology to my sister. Aster's gaze was steady as he spoke up frankly. Please save the punishment until after that is finished. Uncle. At those words, Roderick's expression grew even darker. I heard you were just an orphan. That Highfree picked up and raised. And now you truly think you are a member of the Elms? He replied slowly, his voice perfectly composed. I'm his son first, even if we don't share the same blood. I believe I have learned enough from my father regarding the pride of a knight and the honor of a family. Hearing the answer, he glanced slightly upward. Immediately, Roderick became even more explosive. Then, as a member of the Viscount's house, you have unnecessarily shamed your family head. The pinnacle of 12,000 knights. The king's sword, and that very pride. Those present listened intently to his every word. Surely you understand that. This can no longer be treated as a mere childish squabble. Even Highfree was stunned by the words of Roderick. You should be the one who understands that best of all. Up above, the Duke watched the two of them closely. Roderick continued to speak. Your father lost an arm to atone for his disloyalty. The blade was now inches from Aster's collar. So what will you offer up? He suddenly replied with total respect. Uncle, he spoke with a steely, unyielding voice. This was not a sibling spat, but a valid duel. I only used my sword to answer the insults against my family. Roderick frowned deeper, his sharp gaze never wavering. Aster stood without a hint of fear and retorted frankly. One who cannot avenge their own defeat is unworthy of holding a sword. Those are your words, uncle, weren't they? I have no intention of losing even a single finger. Up in the stands, Alfin trembled at his words. The Duke raised an eyebrow, his eyes filled with interest. That boy is only 15 years old. Are you kidding me? Despite this, Roderick maintained his stern, unchanging demeanor. A moment later, he finally relented and turned slightly away. I see. However, Roderick suddenly whipped back around. Then take your stance. Aster immediately got into position. Ready to react, the blade swept past, right beside him. He didn't hold back at all. The force from the sword sent Aster flying back. Witnessing the scene, Alfin covered her mouth in shock, and Highfree panicked. He immediately roared, Roderick, in a rage. He swung his sword at Roderick's back. Roderick calmly and quickly blocked the strike. Highfree quickly landed safely on the ground. In a panic, he rushed toward the boy. Aster, are you okay, Aster? However, all he saw there was a shattered sword. Highfree couldn't believe his eyes at that moment. But surprisingly, Aster was still standing firm. Despite being covered in injuries, his gaze remained determined. Roderick glanced coldly at such stubbornness. Without a word, he turned his back and walked away. Roderick's face was dark, his fists clenched tight. The moment he left, Aster lost his balance and stumbled downward. Highfree caught him anxiously. Lord Aster. Aster spoke with great difficulty. I kept my word, father. The promise and everything else. He frowned, looking at his reckless son. You did very well. Roderick climbed the stairs with slow, deliberate steps. The Duke stood there waiting for him. He couldn't help but tease him. That was a rather childish move. Roderick showed no sign of intimidation. The Duke calmly analyzed the situation. But if you had let that boy talk any further, the head of the main house would have lost all face. So ending it there was quite reasonable, wasn't it? Even he couldn't stop praising the boy. Aster faced Duke Roderick head on, and he still stood his ground and survived. That boy is a true genius. He chuckled, stroking his chin thoughtfully. That was the most perfect social debut imaginable. The man beside him finally spoke up. Still, I got a pretty good scare. I honestly thought the Elm family was going to be torn in two right then and there. Roderick looked at them both, his eyes bloodshot. A turbulent era is coming. He slowly delivered his judgment. A violent storm, strong enough to tear this world into 2 or 3 pieces. On the following morning, the clear blue sky was scattered. with fluffy white clouds over the landscape. A man stood with his mouth agape, showing clear shock. That a small boy like Aster could take down veteran soldiers. He was absolutely stunned. A faint smile played on the corner of his lips. This is absolutely incredible, he exclaimed with joy, young Master Aster. The soldiers standing behind, witnessing the scene, gasped in amazement. His skills are truly breathtaking. To reach this level at only 15 years old. It's terrifying, he replied excitedly, since the sword dance festival. His training intensity has become even more brutal than before. He must be highly motivated. With a face full of confidence, he continued, furthermore, have you guys heard? The young master defeated the third son of Duke Roderick's house. They were immensely satisfied, because those people from the main house have looked down on us for so many years. This really hits the spot. Meanwhile, from his mind to his eyes, Aster clearly showed a thirst for victory. At the sword dance festival, I showed enough strength and spirit. Every fierce sword strike he swung seemed to speak his inner feelings. At least it was enough to silence the mockery. That the Viscount's house is the disgrace of the Ellams. But the real obstacle is still the head of the Ellum family. Truthfully, I want to know where my actual limits are. I want to test myself in that arena even more. But his face turned resolute. His eyebrows furrowed slightly, showing clear self-assurance. With my current level, I cannot defeat Roderick. Amidst the violent swirling wind, Aster suddenly had a realization. In the end, the wing crest is merely a measure of the latent magic power level within the body. Natural talent is just a wasted treasure if you cannot control it. However, I still haven't been able to release the power of the 7 wings. He swung the weapon in his hand with force. If only I didn't have to worry about losing control. If only I could test the power of the 7 virtues to the very limit. A decisive sweep tore through the ground, blowing the opponent far away. Aster's gaze deepened, sharp, cold, and certain. The sword finally fell. His voice rang out, full of challenge. Is there anyone else? Next, in the blink of an eye, Aster had taken down all the soldiers facing him. From behind, a clear female voice called out. You're really going all out today. Alphen tilted her head with a slight smirk. Her words sounded like a mild reproach. You really don't know the meaning of restraint, Aster. Father is calling for you. He walked silently past the fallen bodies. Father? Yes, I'm coming right away. As he stepped past her, Aster paused, his eyes showing a hint of surprise. That outfit. Alphen turned slightly. Her face was calm, but her eyes were searching. Aster didn't hesitate to speak his mind. It's rare to see you wearing that. Didn't you say you hated wearing it? Because it wasn't cute? Alphen sighed softly, her voice steady. Everything needs balance, right? Looking at you, I've realized. I can't just stand still forever. She then raised a wooden sword, pointing it at him as a warning. Therefore, she cleared her throat, half joking, half serious. When you get back, you'll have to dedicate plenty of time to me. Hearing that, Aster couldn't help but laugh out loud. He raised both hands in the air. Please go easy on me, okay? Aster stood before the study door and knocked gently. He then pushed the door open and stepped inside. Excuse me. Highfree tilted his head with a cold expression. Father, you called? Have a seat. Aster sat down cautiously, amidst the heavy atmosphere of the room. He leaned back his chair, his eyes reflecting a touch of weariness. It has been 15 years since you joined our family. Suddenly, Highfree brought out a precious treasure, under Aster's astonished gaze. Actually, I intended to wait until you were a bit older, but he looked at it, his mind in a whirl. He furrowed his brows, his gaze growing solemn. The proof of the successor to the Aster family. Highfree slowly made his request. I want you to succeed as the head of the Viscount house. Faced with his somewhat unexpected proposal, Aster's entire body froze. As you know, the position of the Viscount house is very delicate. Highfree explained in a soft voice. But despite our flaws, we are still a side branch bearing the name Ellum, serving as lords protecting this territory. There are many things we must protect. He expressed his concern. I cannot leave the position of the future family head vacant forever. Even so, Aster appeared quite concerned. Do my sisters agree with this? Highfree comforted him gently. Your sisters are currently studying at the Knight Academy. They will return in 3 days. I plan to speak with them then. Aster worried. Sister Martha and Sister Kudo are coming home? Aster's face darkened significantly. If that's the case, they won't be happy. Especially Sister Kudo. She's definitely going to fly into a rage. He stated clearly, she hates me because I was born a boy by chance and accidentally possessed the power of the 7 virtues. Aster immediately and decisively refused. I cannot agree to this. His voice carried a sharp, cold edge. I still can't even control my own magic power. I am still the child who once almost killed his own sister. Aster believed, I don't have the confidence to face my sister's resentment like that. Hyfree didn't rush to speak, but gave a soft smile. After a long silence, he finally spoke. There are times when I truly wonder if you're actually a child or not. He excitedly placed a luxurious wooden box on the table. This ring was originally meant to be a reward for your performance at the Sword Dance Festival. He watched the box with meticulous attention. But perhaps you will like this thing better. His eyes instinctively lit up as Aster showed his excitement. That is, Hyfree lowered his voice and explained the item inside. The magic sword, Graham. A blade that devours magic power. A sword capable of suppressing the power of the seven wings. Hyfree led him into a forest. All right, this spot should be fine. Aster asked in confusion. Father, if it's just to test a sword, wouldn't the training hall be enough? No, this is just to prepare for the worst-case scenario. He recalled, when you were little, you had a tendency to wreck the house. Quite frequently. Hyfree raised the sword, his gaze solemn. The magic sword, Graham, is a legendary treasure, passed down only to the eldest son of the Elam family. This sword was originally entrusted to the main house for safekeeping, but I personally brought it back here, specifically for you. The steel flashed a moment. The blade left its scabbard. Aster's pupils constricted, his eyes shaking under the brilliant light. The sword was strangely fractured, unlike any weapon he had ever seen. Is this thing a sword? As you can see, it has no blade. A blue aura swirled around the steel, while a crimson energy erupted violently. The sword immediately transformed, but when you pour mana into it, the red energy concentrates, extending and shifting with every beat. The sword's blade will take shape, based on the mana of its owner. Mana exploded from the hilt, dyeing the surrounding ground red. A vortex of air swirled through the forest, sucking leaves and stones into its center. Hyfree held the glowing red sword firmly, his expression stern. However, if the user is not capable enough, the sword will drain their entire mana supply. This is a sword with a dark reputation. The flaming sword stopped right before Aster's eyes. He proposed, so do you want to try it? Without a moment's hesitation, Aster confidently gripped the sword. Flames erupted fiercely behind his back, and in his hand, the swirling mana seemed to answer his call. My mana is pouring into this sword. The mana burst forth in a golden light, tearing through space. This feeling is, in a burning reflection, the red mana surged like a living creature. Is my mana flowing into the sword of its own accord? A beam of red light shot straight up into the sky. Something had officially been unleashed. Their faces turned pale. What was that light just now? Was it a meteor falling from the sky? You idiot, it was the opposite. Something just shot straight up into the heavens. Amidst the chaos, Alphen silently watched them from behind. Something? What do you mean by that? Without needing to look for long, she had already guessed the source of that beam of light. It must be Aster. He gripped the sword tightly, his golden eyes glowing with excitement. This sword is truly unbelievable. Hyfree's gaze wavered slightly. What's unbelievable here? The sky swirled into a giant vortex. Wind and clouds merged as one. That is your power. A power that exceeds the boundaries of the entire family. And now, it resided within him. The one who bore the seven-winged crest. Even looking back through the entire history of the Elam bloodline, there had never been anyone like him. One day, he would become a swordsman far surpassing even him. If you master that entire power, then one day, you will become a swordsman who far surpasses even me with these 6 wings, and far surpasses Roderick. A single thought emerged in his mind. Surpass him? His hand tightened around the hilt. Light flickered across the blade. But great power will always breed conflict. From his back, golden wings of mana unfurled brilliantly. If the fact that you possess the 7 virtues is exposed, the greater the power, the more risks and enemies you will face. There will be those who are jealous, those who harbor resentment, and those who will plot to use you for their own ends. And there will be those who want to eliminate you as an obstacle. Hyfree reached his hand out toward him, so that when that time comes, you won't have to regret your own helplessness. He held out his hand under the sunlight filtering through the leaves. Become strong starting right now. Aster, their hands gripped each other firmly. That's right. I will not live a pathetic life like my previous one ever again. Aster raised his head, his eyes showing full determination. Thank you, Father. I will master the 7 virtues in this sword. The whole family stood together in the main hall. 3 days later. Welcome home. At the gate, Kudryavka stepped forward with great energy. The useless Kudryavka has returned. One of them covered her mouth and giggled. Her face flashed with a mischievous look. Kudryavka spread her arms wide. With a radiant smile, she enthusiastically wanted to embrace everyone. Come here, my lovely little sisters. The two girls rushed in for a hug, laughter echoing through the hall. Give your beloved big sister a warm hug. Wait, both of them ignored Kudo and rushed to hug Martha instead. Welcome home, Sister Martha. Oh my. She stopped and turned to complain. What about hugging Sister Cud? The two of them grimaced and explained. Because Sister Kudo always messes up our hair. She couldn't accept it, turning away to avoid their eyes. No way. Someone who has trained their knightly spirit to absolute perfection would never do something so tactless. Kudryavka saw Alphen standing nearby and excitedly lunged into her arms. Alphen, have you been a good girl? She hugged and rubbed Alphen's head until her hair was a mess. Why did you run over here? Martha looked around, noticed someone was missing, and asked, Where's Aster? Highfree hesitated and said, Oh, if it's the boy. As soon as she heard his name, her expression changed. A terrifying light emanated from the other side of the forest. Aster was frantically practicing how to control this mysterious sword, his teeth gritted tight. Sweat poured down. Damn it. Still not quite there. He focused on the mana he had just created and carefully analyzed it. I can shape the sword with mana, but I can only control it to this extent. Aster continued to push himself through training, closely examining the sword. He wondered, Father, how could he control it so effortlessly? Suddenly, Kudryavka approached. In a mocking tone, she said, Quite a show you're putting on. Aster, surprised, greeted her. You're back, Sister Kudo. So, you couldn't even bother to show your face and greet your sister, who just returned. She furrowed her brows, her tone mocking. Isn't that a bit too cold? Her words gradually became harsher. Are we not even worth your time? Or is it because you think you're special? I heard everything that happened at the Sword Dance Festival. Even the Knight Academy is buzzing about you. Father must be so proud. However, Aster calmly replied instead. As for you, sister, I heard that even though you're still a trainee, you've already achieved numerous outstanding merits on your missions. On her person, Kudryavka wore the Medal of the Knight Academy, and she was the only one to receive the Honorary Knight Medal this year. The Platinum Medal. She confidently asserted, of course. Otherwise, how could I inherit Father's position? Kudryavka's gaze gradually turned irritable. I heard you refused the right of succession. Aster worriedly tried to figure out how to handle the situation. Is she trying to warn me? Father already told you? This is troublesome. No, that's not it. She let out a faint, mocking smirk. I just think that I'm still too lacking to take on that position. Every step she took was firm and powerful. To be honest, both Father and you. Kudryavka drew her sword. That know exactly what my dream is. And yet, how cruel. What are you doing all of a sudden? Aster watched intently, his anxiety hard to hide. She decisively sliced down a tall tree nearby, sending it flying forcefully toward him. Luckily, he managed to dodge it just in time. Aster's eyes were filled with pure shock. What are you doing all of a sudden? Kudryavka coldly proposed. Let's see. It's been a while. Let me test your skills a bit. She rested her sword on her shoulder with a confident look. I'll be serious with the next strike. In contrast, Aster hurriedly tried to stop her. Wait, Sister Kudo. This sword is still incomplete. But she didn't buy it. Would you be able to give that same excuse? When facing an enemy on the battlefield, Aster laughed nervously. Enemy? Kudryavka lowered her stance, her eyes filled with a hunger. To take him down, a knight must always consider themselves to be standing in the middle of a battlefield. If you keep holding back, I'll crush you. You know that, right? He was dazed and worried. This is no joke. Witnessing her, lunging toward him with a sword in hand. I'm putting everything I have into keeping my mana from exploding right now. His eyes turned sharp. There was no other choice. If he didn't, she really would. He struggled to block the force. If not, Kudryavka will kill me. The entire forest immediately fell into chaos. The scenery was a blur. He only saw Kudryavka relentlessly advancing with her blade. Your swordsmanship is as sharp as ever, isn't it? I didn't expect you to keep up with my strikes, especially since I've leveled up at the Knight Academy. She continued to speak. However, what the hell is with that half-baked swordsmanship? Kudryavka swung her sword powerfully, sending Aster stumbling backward. Your mana control is a complete mess. He tried to use his feet to land safely on the ground. Aster couldn't believe it, and immediately shouted, Sister Kudryavka, you really haven't changed. No mercy at all. He suddenly thought to himself, in my memories, she's always been this way. Simply because I was the only boy in the Viscount's family, with the right of succession. Aster recalled the times he experienced as a child. And because she was a special existence, possessing a winged crest far superior to anyone else in the family. He also remembered the times Kudryavka used to chase him, an older sister like a storm, always finding an excuse to call me unfair just to challenge me. But while Aster was still thinking, she suddenly vanished. To put it bluntly, she is my natural nemesis. A voice suddenly rang out, making him jump. That's so like you, Aster. Would you like me to translate more of this story, or perhaps adjust the tone of the dialogue for any specific characters? Kudryavka suddenly appeared from high above. She swung her sword with all her might, her steely voice ringing out. You are not worthy at all of becoming the next patriarch of this family. On the other side, Martha looked calmly out the window. Father, is it really okay to leave those two like that? She was worried, staring intently at her father. In the worst-case scenario, this sibling squabble will end with a corpse. I know that. However, Highfree didn't seem worried at all. In their own way, they are excellent rivals for one each other. It might be a bit reckless, but it won't lead to such a tragic end. Martha frowned slightly. I hope you're right, Father. And she slowly stepped closer. Back to the main point. Father, why did you call us back from the Night Academy? Anyway, surely it wasn't just to discuss the inheritance, was it? Highfree gently took something out from the desk drawer. You're right about that. Martha was truly stunned, unable to believe her eyes. Something was pulled out. It was a letter. A summons from the Elamain house. It seems the elders in power at the Main family want to see their nephew with their own eyes. She lowered her eyes and rubbed her chin thoughtfully. This is indeed a serious matter. Highfree looked stern, his eyes narrowing slightly. In the worst-case scenario, he slowly spoke of the darkest possibility, that we might lose Aster. Meanwhile, Aster was struggling to counterattack. Stop talking nonsense. I already refused the inheritance. You heard that too, didn't you? However, Kudryavka showed no mercy at all, and that is exactly what makes me so furious. She decisively swung her sword toward Aster. So heavy, he lamented to himself. It feels like I'm fighting an ox with a sledgehammer. Aster's hands suddenly rotated with agility. That move caused Kudryavka to stumble forward. He decisively swung his sword high, simultaneously raising his voice. Are you going to listen to a word I say? Would you like me to continue translating the next part of this encounter between Aster and Kudryavka? She wasn't worried at all by his actions. You're just running away, aren't you? Kudryavka calmly swung her sword with precision. The violent force sent him stumbling, his back slamming into a tree. What kind of monstrous strength is this? Her blade continued to accumulate mana on its own. Those who only know how to swing a sword are third-rate. Kudryavka calmly delivered her judgment. Those who can control their mana are second-rate. She stood there and continued speaking. Only when you master the way of the magic sword can you be considered first-rate. Her gaze couldn't hide her utter disappointment. How disappointing, Aster. Kudryavka slowly began to explain. The difference in wing crests directly reflects the amount of mana that we can contain. They say a difference of 1. Wing means a threefold increase in power. She then held up 2 fingers in front of her. In other words, in terms of magical firepower and physical stamina, my second-rate 5-wing status is far inferior to your 7-wing status. Kudryavka's voice rang out with a hint of mockery. And yet you avoid a direct confrontation with that cowardly swordsmanship you favor. She smirked with a playful, sharp grin. Is it because you can't believe in your own power to reach the ideal realm of swordsmanship? Kudryavka suddenly brought up the past. Were you afraid you'll lose control again? Just like 3 years ago, Aster realized with shock. Afraid? Me? Afraid of the power of the 7 wings? He looked at the sword in his hand and thought about everything. I never even considered that. Have I been unconsciously restraining my own power? Doubt began to stir within Aster's heart. Could the reason this sword is so unstable be that I've been forcibly suppressing my mana? However, before he could think further, Kudryavka used her mana. Aster, you have everything I've ever dreamed of. She gripped her sword tightly. If you just let that luck rot away, without even realizing it, would you like me to continue with the next part of this confrontation and find out how Aster responds to his sister's provocation? Then I have every right to be arrogant. With that, she lunged forward without a second thought. Just hand it all over to me. Aster refused to back down and took his stance. 2 powerful mana currents immediately clashed. Witnessing this, she cried out in utter confusion. He pushed back my full force strike. Aster spoke up, calm and steady. Thank you, sister. Thanks to you, I've finally realized the truth. Seeing him rush in, Kudryavka thought to herself. He's charging without even forming a blade. In a panic, she tried to swing her sword forward. No way. He should have been drained of mana from that last attack. At that moment, Aster thought to himself. The infinite mana latent within the 7 wings. He silently calculated his next move. Right now, I can't control all of it. But for just this one instant, I won't maintain the sword's shape. Instead, I'll pour every bit of mana into the exact moment of impact. Kudryavka suddenly smiled. So you actually came up with something, you idiot. Aster suddenly muttered something under his breath. This second life that I happened to receive. A strange mana sigil suddenly appeared behind his back. But I absolutely will not waste it. And that goes for this power as well. Aster recalled everything important to him. Both the swords and the family. Everything. No matter how much I achieve, it still feels like I have nothing. Those words left Kudryavka dazed. A second life? He slowly gathered a dense flow of mana. That is why. Aster aimed decisively at her sword. He suddenly vanished, triggering a surge of doubt in Kudryavka. What? Then she stammered. The sword vanished. It's like he's a different person. Aster whispered softly, I won't hold back anymore. Only now did Kudryavka feel the true difference. She gasped, her eyes widening in total shock. Kudryavka sat up dazed and spoke slowly. Is this my room? A voice suddenly rang out. Finally awake, are you? She immediately replied. Sister Martha, I'm really late waking up, aren't I? Would you like me to continue with the next scene to see what Martha has to say about the results of the duel? Kudryavka suddenly bolted upright immediately after. Thinking back, she remembered the match with Aster. What on earth happened in the end? However, her sister happily told her. Aster was the one who carried you back here on his back. As she spoke, she pulled the curtains back. He said you fell asleep right in the middle of the match. He even said it was probably because you were exhausted from the long journey. She glanced briefly at her sword. That's not right. Kudryavka thought to herself, her heart filled with conflicting thoughts. In that final moment, I really thought I was being cut down by Aster. She couldn't help but be amazed by what had occurred. But actually, right before the collision, Aster dispelled that mana blade. Even Kudryavka herself could feel it. And it was only the lingering residue of that mana that brushed past my body. Thinking about it carefully, it would be impossible. Aster would never actually kill his own biological sister. She couldn't suppress the doubt in her heart. But at that exact moment, I truly thought I was going to be killed. Kudryavka suddenly smirked. He really is an annoying little brother to the very end, even though he's clearly much smaller than me. Then she suddenly grabbed her sword. Sister Martha, is Aster going out to the field again? Kudryavka aggressively threw off her blanket. I don't accept the results of that match. She insisted that this time, I'll use my full power right from the start. Martha suddenly cut her off. If you're looking for Aster, he's already gone. You know that, right? Those words left her completely stunned. She calmly explained that. There was a summons from the main house, specifically addressed to Aster. So, about that talk with father earlier. Wait, you didn't know? Kudryavka's face now showed a look of total confusion. She shouted in a panic, I never heard anything about that. At that moment, a carriage was speeding down the road. Aster remained composed, gazing out the window. Highfree slowly began to give his instructions. The people we are about to meet from here on out are the Council of Elders, who secretly assist the Elam family like shadows. Would you like me to continue with Aster's arrival at the main house and his encounter with the Elders? He continued to explain. They're the former heads of the main house and various branches, or seniors serving under the Elam name. These people still hold massive influence, even after retiring from the front lines. The rulers in the shadows. Then, Highfree let out an anxious sigh. Those elders haven't shown a single bit of interest since the day I adopted you, and yet they've summoned you at a time like this. However, Aster only turned his head calmly. It's likely because of the incident at the sword dance festival. He recounted what he knew. Those old men of the Elam's value. The family's reputation more than money, honor, or even life itself. I've heard as much. And those who tarnish that reputation will be thrown into cages and turned into beast bait. As the sentence finished, Highfree looked at his son with worry. Aster, where on earth did you hear those rumors? He explained awkwardly. Oh, just from somewhere before. Anyway, I've already steeled myself to face execution or exile. He frowned, staring intently at his son. Are you truly okay? Going out there without any escort? But Aster replied with immense composure. It's fine. I originally planned to leave just as my sisters arrived. He smiled gently, turning his head, especially with Sister Kudo. If I, the one she hates, am not around, then she can finally spread her wings and fly freely. Then Aster lightly touched his sword. Thanks to Sister Kudo, I've begun to see how to master this Graham. He frowned, gripping the sword tightly. I feel like I can draw out more of the 7 virtues power than before. So no matter what happens to me from now on, please don't try to save me. Aster added. I prepared myself to survive on my own. Highfree's brows knit even tighter. Aster, you, But a voice suddenly rang out. Survive on your own? What a load of crap. The youngest child is acting all high and mighty, putting on airs. Highfree couldn't help but be surprised by the voice. He was shocked, unable to believe his eyes. Outside the glass, Kudryavka suddenly appeared. Sister Kudo, would you like me to translate the next part of this sibling confrontation for you? Why are you here? She didn't pay the slightest bit of attention to Aster's words. Wait, don't tell me you ran all the way here. Kudryavka calmly climbed inside the carriage. Don't you think that's cruel? Leaving quietly without saying a single word to your sister? She spoke up petulantly. I heard everything. You've been summoned by the great elders of the main house. Haven't you? Even Martha and I have never been summoned even once. Highfree awkwardly and hurriedly interrupted. Kudryavka, I think you understand. But bringing you to the main house is... She gently sat down beside Aster. I understand. I heard that Father called us here to look after things while Father is away. I understand that perfectly well. Kudryavka's sharp eyes glanced sideways. But this summons means something big is happening. So we have to be that much more careful. Her voice rang out again. Sister Martha already said it, and you know it too. Aster might not come back. Upon hearing those words, Aster gently tried to comfort her. You're exaggerating. I'm just going to meet them and talk. As for whether he would return safely or not, that was indeed a concern. But then Kudryavka suddenly pointed her finger straight at his face. Listen here, Aster. I really hate you. Her steely accusations rang out one after another. Because you're a man. Because of the 7 virtues. Because you're always treated specially. She continued to speak. Because you're stronger than me, your own older sister. And because you keep acting like an adult, even though you're just a little brother. All of that. Aster stared blankly at his sister, his heart full of confusion. The next words from Kudryavka made them both watch her intently. But even so, you are my precious family. No matter how strong you are, no matter how much you act like an adult, you are still my little brother. She suddenly stood up. So, make sure you come back properly. Then, we will have our rematch. Would you like me to translate the next scene where Aster finally arrives at the Elm main house? Kudryavka decisively threw the door wide open. If you try to back out while you're ahead, I will never forgive you. Without another word, she suddenly leaped out of the moving carriage. Aster could only watch her helplessly. Sister, what on earth did she even come here for? Hayfree's eyes softened slightly. He quietly praised her. She's quite the worthy rival, isn't she? At that moment, Aster thought to himself, as he watched her figure fade into the distance, but thank you, sister. His heart surged with determination. I will definitely come back. The moment they set foot at their destination, a commanding voice rang out, Welcome back, Lord. Highfree, the soldier spoke coldly. The great elder is already inside waiting for you. Highfree flatly refused. There's no need for a guide. I know the way. Despite that, the man replied nonchalantly. I'm afraid that won't do, sir. I have received orders to personally escort both of you inside. He observed them closely, thinking to himself, as expected, they didn't call me here. Out of grandfatherly love. At the very least, the atmosphere here doesn't feel that way. Aster's gaze silently scanned the surroundings. Still, he glanced at the castle. It's quite nostalgic. It's been a long time since I've been back home. Highfree suddenly spoke up. I'm sure you already understand this. Aster. His voice was deep and steady as he gave his warning. But today, you must absolutely not lose your cool, no matter what they might say to you. Aster replied indifferently. That depends on their attitude. Highfree closed his eyes helplessly. That is exactly why I said they are a handful. He continued rambling. Listen, the person we are about to meet is, at that moment. Aster's gaze drifted toward the training grounds. There was no sign of Dallas anywhere. With his dominant hand crushed, it's likely he won't be returning to duty anytime soon. Hayfree's voice pulled him back from his thoughts. Would you like me to translate the next section where Aster finally faces the great elder? Are you even listening to me? Aster, under his father's gaze, replied awkwardly. Yes, of course I am. He asserted firmly. I'll be on my best behavior and keep quiet today. Besides, my second sister warned me that it's best if I return home in one piece. The chamber doors slowly creaked open. The escorting soldier immediately announced them. Lord Highfree and his son have arrived. An unfriendly voice suddenly rang out. You've finally arrived. It's been over 15 years, hasn't it? The old man continued. So, how is my grandson, Highfree? Highfree immediately knelt and spoke respectfully. It has been a long time, Sixhead. The man immediately corrected him. No, you should call me grandfather. Aster glanced at the man before him. This is the monster lurking in the shadows of the Elam family, he thought silently. The 6th patriarch of the main house, Guinness A. Elam. Aster immediately scanned the room. And I'm guessing the rest of them are all high-ranking figures under the Elm banner. He calmly looked at each person. I recognized a few faces from the sword dance festival, but a specific name suddenly flashed in Aster's mind. Is Roderick not here? As if seeing through everything, Guinness spoke up. He's not here, Brad. The old man slowly explained. He is the Grand Master of the Royal Knights. Guinness leaned on his cane and continued slowly. He doesn't have time to bother with trivial matters. Like this. That's why us old men are helping him handle administrative and internal issues. Aster frowned, looking at the old man. In my previous life, I never even had the chance to meet him, so I didn't really care. He silently weighed all the possibilities, but to gather this many officials, without the current head of the house being present, for someone who has retired, he seems to still hold a massive amount of power. Then Highfree suddenly asked, and what exactly are these trivial matters you speak of? Guinness spoke up calmly. Would you like me to translate the next part of this tense meeting with the Elm elders? You probably already guessed it, haven't you? There was a hint of mockery lingering in his voice. I heard your little pet caused quite a massive commotion at the sword dance festival. Anxiety immediately washed over Aster. Just as I thought. It's about that. Facing the interrogation, Highfree spoke up calmly to defend his son. Regarding that issue, the current head of the house, Roderick, should have already settled it himself. However, the elders present immediately began to jeer. That was nothing more than a performance, to pull the wool over the public's eyes. It doesn't change the fact that the Elm family's reputation has been tarnished. All those venomous words instantly fell upon him. Adopting a child of unknown origin into the family was a mistake from the very beginning. We could have turned a blind eye if he had remained harmless. But once he dared to bare his fangs at the main house, it became a completely different story. There is no choice but to exile him. And of course, you will not escape a fitting punishment either. Lord Highfree, standing beside him, Aster couldn't hold back and immediately spoke up in protest. Wait, I'm the one who did everything. He tried to explain the situation in detail. My father has nothing to do with. However, Highfree only shook his head slightly, signaling for him to stop. Seeing this, Aster froze. The words caught in his throat. Without a shred of mercy, Guinness continued to deliver his criticisms. It seems your upbringing is quite lacking, allowing a child to brazenly intervene in an adult conversation. The old man slowly stood up. We lead over 12,000 knights under our command, Guinness added further. We carry the weight of the Elm name on our shoulders. However, the knights are not a monolithic entity. Following Guinness's words, everyone around them cast contemptuous glances their way. Countless individuals are watching from shadows, waiting for an opportunity to seize the highest position. Would you like me to translate the next part, where Highfree responds to these harsh accusations? He didn't stop rambling. Of course, that includes everyone present. In this very room. As he finished, Guinness slowly stepped forward. We simply want peace of mind. We need proof that you aren't someone who will harm the Elm family. He coldly raised the hilt of his sword, placing it right in front of Highfree's face. He stared back, bewildered. This is... Guinness coldly brought up the past. You remember, don't you? When you failed to protect your master and dragged the Elm family's honor through the mud. Without a shred of mercy, he coldly made an offer. Right here in this room, you let Roderick cut off one of your arms. With a sharp, cold gaze, he gave a commanding order. This time, prove your loyalty by taking that brat's head. At those words, Aster's eyes couldn't hide his pure shock. But he wasn't finished. Guinness continued in a sinister tone. If you do that, everything will be forgiven. Despite the pressure, Highfree firmly refused. I refuse, he said without a hint of fear. I would rather take my own life than lay a hand on my own child. Beside him, Aster looked at his father in confusion. Guinness replied irritably, I see. Very well. Then, he aggressively raised his cane. In that case, Guinness's voice was steely and devoid of love. You may go ahead and die. Your wife, your daughters, and that brat. Not a single soul will be spared. The moment he finished, all the soldiers rushed forward. As of today, the Viscount's house will officially be erased. In an instant, both Aster and Highfree were tightly surrounded. Facing this situation, he spoke up slowly. Were you so afraid of great-grandfather? That tone made Guinness turn his head in anger. What? Aster questioned him coldly. A bunch of grown men huddling together and trembling. Would you like me to translate the next part of this confrontation to see how Aster handles the surrounding soldiers? How pathetic. If you're so afraid of being bitten by your own dog, then go ahead and exile or dispose of me as you wish. Then he suddenly loosened his tie. But if you intend to lay a hand on my family, even just a single finger, that action left Highfree standing beside him stunned. He quickly yanked his shirt off. I'm sorry, father. I guess in the end, I just can't bring myself to sit here and keep quiet. The knights there couldn't help but feel astonished. What is that? They stammered in confusion, staring at Aster's back. The crest on his back. The mark on his back immediately began to glow. If that happens, this 7 virtues user will become the enemy of the Elm family. Aster glanced at them coldly. You all had better think this through.